It is now 5 o'clock. I would like to call to order the Richland County Detention Center Ad Hoc Committee meeting for September the 24th, 2024. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote, please?
Pugh,
Here.
Walker,
Here.
English.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from July 16th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote, please?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. Mr. Brown, is there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
No recommended changes, sir.
All right. Mr. Wright, you see any changes or deletions to the agenda?
No recommended changes.
All right. With that being said, I will entertain a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote, please?
Pugh,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right. The item number 4 on the agenda is items for discussion and action. Mr. Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Wanted to just take a moment. The last time we had our ad hoc meeting covered a number of PowerPoint slides, but we did not have those included as a part of the packet. So now you have that included as a part of the packet. And I wanted to just take a moment and go over some specific examples, talk about some more details related to some of the renovations. And then, Mr. Chair, certainly take any questions that you have. And I certainly anticipate on after our meeting on today to kind of taking these PowerPoint slides, kind of compiling it to a smaller list, maybe where I can provide you with a summation. And so that way, looking at all of these renovations can be done in a smaller bite. So I plan to have that included in the council packet for your next meeting, Mr. Chair. One of the things that we've talked about a number of times is that the detention center has been on a specific strategic mission to address renovations within the facility, to address any outstanding deficiencies that were previously noted. And I will point out that the initial process began when we received communication from the Department of Corrections noting some opportunities for the county to make improvements. Since that time, we have submitted, I believe, up to this point, 3 or 4 different implementation plans where we talked to the Department of Corrections to articulate to them what specific steps we would take to renovate, to address any needs that were in the facility. The activity included work both from the operational side from Richland County. It included work from County Council in improving related funding, as well as work from outside contractors that the county is currently utilizing to move forward with renovations in the facility. One of the things that we talked about was not only the inside of the facility, but the outside of the facility, even addressing the exterior view when you drive up into the facility. And so all of those things have been taken into account, and we have commenced with implementing our plan, which has been in place now for several months. And what you have in your packet, as well as other information that we've shared with the Department of Corrections and others, reflect that work. So the last meeting, I just kind of went through these slides pretty quickly because there were several of them to cover. But today, I wanted to just take a moment and highlight a few specific things just to kind of show you the level of detail that is being done in the facility to address the areas that need to be improved. So one of the things that we started off with was really addressing the kitchen. And as you may recall, there was a question or a conversation about whether or not the food service and the quality of what was being done, whether or not we were meeting the standards that at that time were being managed by the Department of Health and Environmental Control. Since that time, all of our reports that we've received from the Department of Environmental Control have been grade A. So I know that's not often talked about consistently, but that has been the case. We did report that out a number of times here through our local reporting to council and to the committee. But I do want to highlight that some of those questions, not only were they answered, but they were continued with in terms of how we were being viewed by the third party that originally was the party that raised the question. So I'm bringing that up because it's important to highlight that the agency that asked the question, raised the concern, they reviewed our response to the concern, they reviewed the work that we did, and then they rated that work. And so that same agency in that instance with the kitchen was the Department of Health and Environmental Control, which I know they have a different name now, but that's important for you to know. So what do we do in the kitchen? So besides the cleaning and prepping and painting of all the walls, we repaired the entire floor. We installed new cooking equipment. So if there was a question about, whether or not the food prep, the county did acquire new food prepping equipment, address the plumbing in the kitchen, the fixtures within the kitchen, the doors. And again, some of this stuff may sound like, well, Mr. Brown, why are you going through these level of details? Because I really want you to know the level of work that the county has done in these renovations. And I won't go through every single unit this way because it is in the packet, but I did want to take time because there have been questions that have been raised, and I want to articulate just how much work has gone into all of the renovation that we've done. In addition to that, you see here we talked about the new cart railing that we put in. This is both in the kitchen. We did the freezer area as well. And during the time where we were going through these renovations, we actually brought in a temporary kitchen that we prepared food out of. So the county was not only working inside of the facility, but we brought in separate resource to make sure that we could meet our commitments to the level that we wanted to do. And so that kitchen project, I know a lot of you had an opportunity to see it. We were very proud of that. And it really kicked off, what the county was doing related to the detention center. So what about the areas? Did you have a hand up?
Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brown, just a quick question about the kitchen renovation. You mentioned something about a grade A report, or finding, if you will. Which agency gave that finding?
So the same agency that raised the initial question, so that was the Department of Health and Environmental Control. At that time, they were known as DHEC. They are the one that do the review of the food areas. And so that's the agency that always provides those ratings. And so when they came to us and raised a question, we immediately addressed it. And then after that, we received consistent grades of an A related to that same kitchen area.
When was, first, if you would, grade A?
Oh man, I might have to bring up Director Harvey. It's been a while. I mean, we've received several. Director Harvey, do you recall how long ago that's been? It's been several months. Several months.
Has it been at least a year? And
Probably
I'm asking
so.
the question because usually when something gets reported or if you see something in the news, it makes it seem like the county just started to receive, a premium grade for the facility or for the kitchen. So I'm just wondering how long we've been on this streak of receiving a premium grade for the kitchen.
It's been a long time. I can have that ready for the council meeting. So I have the team take that down as a question, and I have that able to respond to you for the council meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Walker. Before we continue, I'd like to recognize my colleagues that are not on this committee, Councilwoman Newton, Councilwoman Terratio, Councilman Don Weaver, as well as Councilwoman McBride and Councilwoman Barron. Thank y'all for joining our committee meeting. Oh, and how could I miss my good buddy Jason down there? Councilman Brenham, thank y'all for joining us. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you just move to the next slide. And again, I'm not going to cover every single one of the units this way, but what you see here does reflect the work that we're doing when we're renovating each of the 18 housing units, which is what the plan is throughout the facility. And it literally is a floor to ceiling renovation. And that includes the walls, as you will see here. So you're talking about cleaning and prepping and sanding, repairing and painting all interior walls in the common areas, all of the cells that are housing cells, the ceilings and any of the ancillary areas inside the housing unit. And I know you all have visited there. And so you may have a clear picture of what I'm saying. And so I'm doing this for those individuals who don't have a clear picture. They haven't been inside the facility and haven't seen a unit and seen it in its renovations. We also modified the existing doors with windows and cuff ports on all cells. So the idea behind this is that from time to time when you have to ask someone to come out of the unit, instead of having necessarily to go into the door and that being the only way that you can get those individuals secure so that you can have them come out with minimal issues, is they can put their hands through the port. So it's a port that opens up. They can slide their hands through there. As necessary, they can put on the necessary materials to show that they are compliant. And then now the staff is not worrying about somebody potentially, throwing, and it's going to sound a little, nasty, but it's some of the reality, throwing urine or feces, on them. Unfortunately, that happens. The way the ports in the door, they're lower, so they're not higher. So again, if they were to do that, if you open the flap, they would have to stick their hand under and come up. So again, it's a way to help protect the men and women in the facility as well from being unnecessarily exposed to those types of things. So unfortunately, those types of things are necessary from time to time. And so that's one of the safety measures that we have in place. Additionally, removing and replacing all of the ceiling tile. And you see here, we're not only addressing the units themselves, but the showers within there. We do have folks that have to be cleaned, and certainly we want to provide a good facility for them to do that. So we have security in our showers. Also, in the recreation yard, and you may recall us talking about this. So the recreation yard that we have, while it is secure, if you go into the open area, they have fencing at the top, so it allows for open air. It allows for individuals to see daylight. But that fencing there, if you recall, was kind of more of your traditional fencing, so the kind of wider brackets. So we wanted to make sure we renovated that so that if someone decided they wanted to try to drop something through that fencing, that is harder for that to get through. So contraband drops. I know you've heard the Department of Corrections and other agencies around South Carolina dealing with drones and people dropping things, trying to influence the contraband into facilities. So we'll address that. Again, cleaning and refurbishing the heating ventilation system within the jail and those units. Also, may seem trivial, but one of the things we try to do is we try to provide recreation for the men and women that happen to be in there. So we do have basketball courts. So we're, kind of doing that whole outside area as well. And then within the facility, we have the construction of guard stations that are within each unit. So the idea is that you have men and women who are on the floor of a housing unit, but then we also have men and women who are in a kind of guard booth that is separate so that we have those individuals controlling access to the unit. And then again, we've heard us talk about the toilet sink combinations that we are providing. So the facility had, old porcelain units that just kind of like you think about a porcelain toilet, a porcelain sink. And we are renovating those and taking those out and replacing them with stainless steel. They also include a water management system. And this water management system is designed both to help more efficiently the flow of water within the facility, but also if someone unfortunately is trying to damage the plumbing, then it can be shut off and controlled to that particular unit and maybe does not affect all of the other areas of the housing units. So one, it's an upgrade, but two, it also allows for a better control of water in that particular unit as compared to other units. So that's just an example of addressing the units. And we're doing that for all of the units, including the doors and the locks that we talked about with an updated locking system. We talked about, why does that matter? The old locking system consisted of pneumatic locks, which simply means that you have air pressure that is used to control the locks, rather than now we have an electronic mechanism that we use to control the locks. There was a question that was asked, what happens when electricity goes out? We talked about having backup generators for that, but then also those systems do have, control keys. So that is another way that we can provide access, to the units. So I just, again, wanted to highlight, because there have been questions about some of the details of the work that's going on, and why does it, so intensive? Maybe why does it take so long to renovate a unit? You're talking about maybe 3 to 4 months on average for a unit. And that does not include the movement of individuals throughout the facility. As an ad hoc committee, I know you've heard a lot about detainees and learning about how people move in and out the facility. So within Alvarez Glen Detention Center, everybody that comes in, they are pretrial detainees, certainly. But when they come in, and as they are awaiting their day in court, depending on what they're charged with, they come into a certain classification. That classification basically communicates, based on what this person is charged with and on any previous history that they've had, this person is okay to be with this group of individuals in this particular area of the jail. Or this individual needs to be with this group of people in this area of the jail, based on, again, their charges and their activity. And that matters because as we're going through this renovation process, one of the things that's been a little bit of a challenge, even though that the detention center director and the team has done a decent job of moving folks around, is as the jail population increases, now you have less space to move people into to do the renovations. And the question might become, well, Mr. Brown, can we put these folks someplace else while these renovations occur? And the answer is no, because other jails have the same issue. They don't have the prerequisite staffing that they need to support their own operations in the way that they want to. So they don't have free space to provide for other detainees that they are not responsible for. So while we may want to be more efficient in how we make these moves within the facility, we have to also deal with the fact that other agencies are unable to take folks because they have their own issues with staff and operational capacity similar to Richland County. So in that instance, what we've been able to do is, as units have come online, the detention center director has been able to maneuver placing individuals based on classification in areas where we can continue to move with the work. So while we have 2 units left for the locks, part of the reason why we don't have all the locks done already is because jail populations increases. So then the time frame that we started with when we talked about getting this done, the parameters were different. So we're still moving down the track. We believe that we will be able to have those locks finished ultimately, Mr. Chair, as we talked about. But that is an example of what happens when you have influx into the facility, how it changes your plans, but all plans continue to move forward. So there's no plans that we've stopped. They just have to be a little bit creative sometimes in how they have to juggle moving men and women around in the facility to comply with both the standards as well as the ability to get the work done. So I've done a lot of talking. I have a lot more I could do, but I'll just stop there and take a moment.
Mr. Chair, I did look up as far as the DHEC inspection report, and since March of 2023, we've had an A. Yes, there's a report from March 2023.
How long is the report, does the report last? Is it for 6 months, 12 months, or what?
They come back and they redo it.
How often?
Mr. Chair, could you recognize the director?
Mr. Harvey, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, yes, ma'am. It's every 6 months or if there's a complaint.
Okay,
Yeah.
so currently we have an A report for the kitchen.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I will also add, Attorney Wright is correct. March was when we got a 99%. But in February, we got a 91. So I'm not a mathematician. I don't know what the grade scales is in school or not, but a 91% was February the 22nd of 2023. March 29th was the 99%.
I'm assuming 90 to 100.
I'm assuming that too.
Hold on.
We better not assume anything, right?
You know, all
Right,
of us
Mr.
done been out of
Chair?
school for a while.
All right, thank you.
Rate us on the curve.
Anybody else got any questions? Mr. Branham, you recognize, sir.
Thank you. Just on that point of the increase we've seen in the population of detainees, do we feel like it's a fair observation that we've seen an increase in the population as a result of some of the bond reform that we saw, the new legislation at the state level?
Yes, sir, and I appreciate the question. We believe that some of the influx that we have seen is associated with the bond reform. During the implementation of that legislation or the consideration, there were counties who went and testified before the General Assembly, communicating that they thought it would result in an increase in detainees in the facility. Obviously, you all know that the information still passed, but I believe, yes, sir, that there's a general consensus that the increases that we have seen reflect the result of bond reform.
And I'm happy to be tough on crime and glad to know that, specifically people that are accused of certain types of offenses or, repeat offenders we're trying to be tough on them. But was there any additional funding allocation to the county detention centers to, deal with the impact of that new state law?
No, sir.
All right, thanks. And then just kind of relatedly, I wondered, you included a slide about recruitment and retention as to staff. Wondered if you could touch on that or speak on that now if you weren't going to do it at some other point in the presentation.
And Mr. Chair, just to kind of feed off of Mr. Branham's question, I believe that probably within 2 months of the change in the law, the population jumped about 200, and I think maybe within 6 months it almost doubled. So it's a significant change. So it's not just a few more; it's very significant.
Mr. McBride, you recognize.
Thank you. So the types of crime being committed, are they more serious crimes? Are they more minor offenses based on the bond reform? Violent, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I heard the answer come from your colleagues.
Yeah,
so,
okay. Well, they were more violent crimes or minor crimes or what?
Yes, ma'am. So there has, and we do have a slide, and I have one in there that shows previously what it looks like. Yes, violent crimes, and that's part of the conversation that I believe a number of officials on the law enforcement side cited when they talked about the need for, increased activity and increased detention. They talked about the number of crimes, specifically in the number of violent crimes that they had seen. So I know that's been a conversation that's been out there. So I would say that is correct.
So our data reflects more violent detainees.
So if you take
With that.
Yes, ma'am. So if you take a look at the breakdown that we had, and we do have a newer version, but I had this and I wanted to be consistent, where it shows you the number of individuals awaiting. I think Ms. Carrillo, I think it has another slide specifically that it shows you the number of individuals who are awaiting trial that have violent charges as compared to the total category of detainees given at that time. So if you take a look there and you're looking at violent charge 557 as compared to the 943 total, you can see that the majority of that number reflects more violent crimes.
But would that be 50% more minor offenses were also detained at that time?
Can see if we can break it down like that, but that list that we're looking at there shows you the general breakdown of the charges that are listed there. In terms of minor offenses, I want to be careful because I'm not sure if just because it's not violent if it's considered minor, but I know what you're trying to ask.
Okay.
I know what you're asking.
Yes, so I'm really concerned with, we understand the violent offenders, but I'm really concerned about the number of nonviolent offenders that may be detained, would have otherwise been placed in some other type of program. And so I would like to, if we can break it down to look at those numbers.
Yes, ma'am. And one of the things I shared at the last meeting, and is this something that I asked you all to consider is, when you take a look at, the number of violent crimes or charges versus, non-violent, then, at some point in time, would it be appropriate to have a position that Richland County Council has as it pertains to violent versus non-violent? And so again, I know we're kind of walking down that track right now. We're trying to make sure that now that we have a good renovation plan in place, that we're working and that we see evidence of good things happening, that now we can kind of dig deep and kind of talk about some of the things that we don't control. So that's the area that we don't control, and we feel like now we're in a position to where we could come to council, come to the committee, and talk about not only the work that's being done in the detention center, but the things that happen that affect the detention center, and that's what you're talking about. So I did not ask the solicitor's office to participate necessarily in this meeting, but one of the things that is going to be helpful is to really hear from those agencies that play a role in impacting the facility as to, how they see, their role in, detaining individuals and how those decisions are made. So that's where we're going, Ms. McBride. The Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is also reaching out and talking about doing some work. But I certainly see, Chair Pugh, that this committee being very integral in really helping the county council shape policy positions surrounding the detention center, here in Richland County. And then that will help some of the other effectors understand what you want to see and how you want to be helped in dealing with the detention center.
Thank you.
Ms. Newton, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Brown, you may have just answered one of my questions. When you mentioned the amount of violent crimes for which people are detained in a detention center, you said that you might consider sometime down the line coming to county council for a position. And so my question to you was, is this a staff position, a policy position? But I think you went on later to say a policy position?
That's correct. It would be a policy position that Richland County has, that the county council as a body has, that would then ultimately communicate to other officials who affect the work of Richland County Council, what you expect to see. Yes, ma'am. So that would not be necessarily a position of the administrator. It would be a position of Richland County Council, which I would then, abide by and work through based off of, how you see the county affecting detention.
Thank you for clarifying that. And let me just say that I, for one, really appreciate that idea. And one of the things that you called out is there are many players who play a role in the situation at the detention center in terms of the number of detainees, et cetera. We are very, as you've heard me say before, we're downstream. We're at the end of that process. We don't commit the crimes. We don't arrest the people for the crimes. We don't determine the sentencing. We don't set the rules about who can guard whom, et cetera. And we are responsible for caring for these detainees. And so I do think that spirit of partnership and working together so that we can all make the situation better would be great. One question that I have, looking at this slide, this is a snapshot of a particular point in time. However, generally speaking, would you say that these percentages, would you say that this is representative data in terms of the general population and also specifically the general amount of time that some of these detainees have been in custody? So for example, if you look at the violent charges, the vast majority of those have been there for over a year.
So I'm going to answer your question two ways. Based off my review and understanding is this is representative. And that we do have individuals specifically in those areas who stay for an extended period of time. And then I think because not that I'm only, but because I'm just the administrator and not someone who's there on a day-to-day basis, I think it would be good to understand from the director's position, Mr. Chair, what that reflection looks like from somebody who is in the facility working with these individuals on a day-to-day basis. So I think that would be a more definitive answer as to whether or not this is a representative of what's more likely to be the case. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, if you would recognize Director Harvey to answer that same question so we can make sure that you get the direct answer, Ms. Newton.
Director Harvey, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. To answer your question, that data is a representative of what we look at on a daily basis. One of the things I think, Ms. McBride, you brought up was the nonviolent and the stay on how they're staying, or the length of stay that they stay. Our nonviolent are not the ones that are staying long. Bond reform is solely focused on violent offenses that have been recommitted. So when you look at bond reform, just also think in the back of your mind, that's a violent charge, a person that was out on bond, they recommitted whatever, and now the judge is saying, you know what, enough is enough, you're staying in until said case. So bond reform doesn't not reflect nonviolent, they really reflect the violent charges. So I just want to clarify that for you. And Ms. Newton, I hope I answered your question, but yes, ma'am, the data is real. It represents what we see on a daily basis.
Thank you. And then just finally, I'll just thank you and your staff, the administrator, and certainly you're part of that, your team as well. Thank all of you for the work that you've done, the tireless work that you have committed here, and also thank you for bringing such a substantive update. Mr. Chair.
Here, I just want to sort of stay on the subject that has been raised by Ms. McBride, which is pretty important. Ms. McBride talked about or expressed, solicitude about the length of time that detainees are at the facility, and it's certainly a concern that I share as well. I guess I have somewhat of a different vantage point when looking at this issue, just by virtue of my profession and what I do on a daily basis. But when looking at the number of detainees that have been there for longer than 6 months, I mean, the number is 557, Mr. Brown, according to the spreadsheet that you provided for as violent offenders. But actually, that number is higher because you got that drug trafficking category for 44. Well, drug trafficking is violent in South Carolina. So you bump that number up to over 600, which is well above the 50%. Or that represents rather well above 50% of the total adult population at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center right now. And then you look at burglary, where certain burglary charges are deemed violent. So this number is probably somewhere above 625 detainees that are currently in the detention center and awaiting trial. And I know there's been concern also expressed about our judicial system and moving cases, at a, I guess, an acceptable or rapid pace. But the wheels of justice, they turn slowly, and especially when you look at crimes where not only are they violent offenses, but they're mandatory minimums. You're facing a life sentence or what have you. And I can tell you, someone who is a former public defender. In fact, my first job as a lawyer was with the Richland County Public Defender Office back in 2005. And at one time I had as many as 300 cases. And so at that time you had about 5 circuit court judges in Richland County. Public defenders, probably about 20 in the office at the time. Prosecutors, you had maybe 20, 25 prosecutors in the 5th Circuit Solicitor's Office. So you do the math on that. Let's say you try a case every day for an entire month. If you're fortunate enough to move 5 cases a week, that comes out to about 20 cases a month. 20 times 12, I think that number comes out to about maybe, is that what, 240? 240 cases. So if you tried a case every day in Richland County General Sessions Court, you would barely put a dent in the total number of detainees that we have sitting in the detention center as we speak. And so in short, what I'm really saying is this issue is an intractable issue. You have more crimes being committed or more people being arrested, and you have lawyers and judges and jurors to sit and hear these cases and make sure that they get tried. And so just thought I would just, add that, try to add some context to the conversation, and that, these extended stays, if you will, or protracted detentions at our local jail, it's not happening in a vacuum. The reality is you just don't have enough lawyers, enough courtrooms, and enough jurors to hear these cases to be able to move, these individuals through our detention center in less than a year. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging me.
All right.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Branham asked a question about personnel, and I'll touch on that, Mr. Branham, partially because part of that information, is a security matter. But part of what we provided into the packet was just to show you that through the efforts that we've been trying to put out, we have attracted individuals. We have hired a number of employees to the detention center. We also showed you that, unfortunately, a number of folks have exited. Some of those exits have been voluntary. Some of them have been involuntary. And I'll just, take just a quick moment to highlight the fact that we want good people. We want to pay good people for good work. This council, my administration, we have taken a step to try to identify what is a good salary. And as well as, how can we be creative in making sure that people who are working long hours at the detention center feel financially, rewarded for their work. But at the same time, the other side of that is, if you don't do the right things, then this job can find you on the other end. And the same people that you are now guarding, you could be in a situation where someone has to guard you. And so my position as county administrator, I've made clear, and some people, they may hear this as negative, but some people will hear it as a recruitment call, because you will know that in our organization, if you do the right things, we're going to reward you. But if you do the wrong things, then yes, we may have to prosecute you as well. You may have to be charged and arrested. And we want people to feel confident that their safety and security is paramount. And so if you want to work at a place where we care about you, we want to reward you with a good pay for the work that you do, we have positions available at Richland County. And if you're someone who's looking to do bad things, we're not the place for you, because we might hire you, but if we find out you're doing the wrong things, then you might be charged and arrested. And so to that point, Mr. Branham, that's what you see on the slide, is you see the number of folks that we were actually able to hire. We hired quite a number of people. We weren't able to retain them all, but one of the things that I'll highlight for you is, because I know a lot of times people don't know what's the number. Well, that's a security issue, but let me talk to you about the agency who is responsible for determining, again, how jails and prisons look in South Carolina. That's the Department of Corrections. So in their response to our November 30th report, here's what they had to say about personnel. Officer manning at the facility has improved, reducing the number of vacant officer positions due to the utilization of contract officers. So they looked at the work that we did both in our hiring process, as well as using a third party to do work in non-secure areas for us, as a means of improving, and they recognize that. And the reason why I bring that up is because when you hear people ask you questions about staffing, everybody knows that staffing is an issue in detention centers. But let's not just focus on detention centers, because staffing is an issue in general. And that's the part I think a lot of times we're not talking about, that there are a lot of organizations who are looking at staffing issues. So it's not necessarily a detention center issue by itself. But separately and apart from that, the agency that is, again, responsible for taking a review of that and determining whether or not good things are happening or improvements are being made has identified that improvements are being made. And I think that's really what I want to leave you with, because I know you get a lot of those questions, and I know that I want to share that with you. So do we have room for more people? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir, we do. Please send them our way. We have available positions. And just wanted to highlight to you, though, that, again, the Department of Corrections has also taken notice of the work that we've done, and has simply communicated that they see the positive trends and that they hope that we continue in that way. And we're not changing any of the things that we've done to influence those trends. So I wanted you to know that. So, Mr. Branham, thank you for your question. I appreciate the question, sir.
Real quick, Mr. Chair.
Oh, one second. Mr. Beebe, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, just a quick question. On this Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center population report, what is this date as of? I've tried to find a date on here. Do you know approximately the
So
date?
the last one that I gave you was for the month, and then which we had that meeting. So that was current at that time of at that last meeting. So our last detention ad hoc meeting was it 2 months ago?
July?
July.
Was it, so this report is as of July?
So that report would have been as of July. So we get a
July.
population report every month.
Okay.
But I had covered that information in the meeting.
Okay.
But I didn't have it in the packet. So I wanted to be able to make sure that we could track what we talked about. So I put that in the packet so you could see that and so the public could have that information available.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Brenner, you recognize?
Thank you. So again, on that recruitment and retention slide, I just want to be clear, there's no data available, I'm guessing, before Q4 2023. Is that what the graph is showing?
So the graphic was showing to you at that time just the tracking of those numbers when we could see where we had kind of fully implemented our pay plan. It was kind of showing you at a point in time where we felt like the initiatives that we put in place were now able to, bear fruit, and we could kind of capture what efforts, our efforts to improve look like.
I just want to highlight, we got a net gain there, and which is great and it's super important. You could definitely see the investment that council made to increase wages, along with the other investments I think have started to pay some dividends with the hire count. And just to echo what the administrator said earlier, we want to look out for our people. And so if we got bad apples in the facility that are employed by the county, we do want to weed them out. We're not running from that. We're not hiding from it. If they need to be weeded out, they're being weeded out. So kudos for that, because we want a facility that runs with integrity and people that have ethics. And so, whoever's been involved in those measures, we thank you for that as well. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Barron, you recognize?
Thank you. Before I ask my question, I definitely want to say, Mr. Brown, and especially to Director Harvey and his team, thank you. Your work doesn't go unnoticed. What we hear and what we don't hear, we appreciate you and all the work you've done, because I think we all inherited a mess, and it's starting to look like something that we can all be proud of as we move forward. And so, Mr. Brown, my question is, we see the trend on the charts here where obviously the efforts that we put forth to hire people gave us great yield from quarter 4 in 2023 to quarter 1 in 24 and quarter 2 in 24, but there's a significant decrease in quarter 3. Do we have an idea of what caused that decrease? Because it's obvious that whatever we were doing, it was working. But it does look like, I don't know if we stopped or if the momentum just kind of died off.
So part of it is, a point in time for collecting the data to provide it to you. Because we are continuing to see individuals that, we are bringing in to hire. So I think if we were to look back at this, we would continue to see a solid number of people that we're bringing in. And to your point, Ms. Barron, there's also a retention side of this. We actually pay employees to stay here. Not when I say that, of course we do, right? We pay people to work, but we also provide incentives, bonuses, and then a pay plan that reflects retention does matter. So we're trying to get them in, have them decide they want to stay with us, and then reward them for making that decision to see that they have a career with Richland County. So we'll take a look at these numbers again, and so at the next ad hoc meeting to see, where these trend lines are, and to see if it's a true fall off or it's just really a point in time. and then we'll circle back around because we have not changed. The pocketbook certainly shows you we have not changed any of the measures that we have in place to affect that. And one of the things we haven't really talked about is the ancillary services around the detention center. And I'll be brief, Mr. Chair, because I want to kind of get into the section B and just talk about, how I want to help provide this information to you in a different format. But in addition to what we told the Department of Corrections we would do about the detention center, we also talked to them about what we're going to do is we're actually going to bring in someone and we're going to focus on compliance. So you raised issues to us about making sure that we're compliant with the standards. And so to show you how serious we are, we're going to bring in a team. We're going to focus on that. So Director Harvey, while he has the overall responsibility of the detention center, we also actually have a compliance director whose job is to facilitate making sure that the things that the Department of Corrections wants to see as a minimum standards, that we achieve those and achieve those at a consistent level. So we also implemented that, which is a little bit, unique in terms of, facilities. But that additional person that we have is a person that also reports to me. So that person, again, we always want to talk things about a positive way. So the positive thing is we provide support for Director Harvey. But then there's the business side of the conversation. The business side of the conversation is when it comes to compliance, we have to make sure we're getting the information. So we have someone who doesn't report to Director Harvey, who reports to me, who then allows me to receive information so that while Director Harvey has a responsibility, I also have a role that says we're going to get what we need to get. Because that's sometimes always a question. People ask you, who's guarding the hen house, right? So in that respect, just want to let you know that we try to have these balances, these checks and balances in place to help make sure that, things are going well. So just want to let you know that we did also do that. We told you that we would. That was part of the plan. That was also implemented. That also goes into the additional training opportunities for our staff because that person will also be working with our detention center officers to make sure they get the training that they need. So while Director Harvey can focus on security, then Director Lipscomb for compliance can focus on training. So again, you don't have people getting overwhelmed or overloaded, is probably a better word, overloaded with so much to get done at the facility. So I just wanted to share that with you because that is something that's important to make sure that we can retain people as well, that they feel trained, that they feel able to do the job that they've been hired to do.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and I know we're trying to get to
you
the
recognize.
next section, but just Mr. Brown, two quick questions. So with the Q3 reporting for retention, when was the date of this report? Because I know we're still in Q3, wrapping up Q3.
Yeah, so that was a report we prepared at the July meeting. So July 23rd meeting. So the end of July is when we provided that information for that report.
Okay, which further is to me a little bit more, even more so interesting with these numbers, but we can talk about that further offline. And then one final question, with now having a compliance director, is that a report that this committee will get? Having a compliance director and they're reporting back to you what they see or what needs to be tweaked or maintained or changed, that's coming in a report form that's going to you and staying to you, or is it going to be made available to this body at some point?
So ideally, the compliance director is working with the information provided by the Department of Corrections. And so really those, it's not like I get a specific set of reports that come to me. So for example, as we're building this out, because remember that's a new position to the facility, then one of those things that we're working with is, how does that position interface with the Department of Corrections? So when the Department of Corrections comes in the past, what would happen is Director Harvey, they were meeting with the Department of Corrections personnel and they're handling, what they need to handle. Now, Director Harvey has the ability to meet with them, but he doesn't even have to touch that. Director Lipscomb can handle that while Harvey is still focusing on the day-to-day operations of the facility. And so really from that side of the house, you're really just talking about what the Department of Corrections is saying about compliance. So you would not necessarily get a whole, another list of reports. One of the things we are working on, though, is providing reports to you all. So that will still come from a combination of Harvey, Lipscomb, let me be clear, Director Harvey, Compliance Director Lipscomb, and myself. So as we talk about providing more data that you can utilize, like, for example, this slide presentation, you can expect to receive more reporting from that perspective. So that is something that you would get. It would necessarily be that these are compliance issues, and I will be sending those to you that, detention center or council, here are compliance issues that are day-to-day. You would not necessarily get the day-to-day, but you will get generally some quarterly reporting on overall what's happening and how we're addressing it in the facility.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown, we're gonna go on to item number 4B. We have about 9 minutes.
Yes, sir. No, the only thing I wanted to touch on here was we had a conversation prior, and for those folks who are hearing this for the first time, all of these slides were covered at our previous meeting, but we just didn't get to the detail that we're talking about now. But I want to bring it back up because as we talk about kind of next steps, one of the areas that we talked about was this idea, and I talked about, a new detention facility, but I didn't talk about the other component of that, which is, expansion of the existing facility. So previously, at some point in time in the past, council took some action with the detention center, and they thought about what would happen if we expanded this facility. And so one of the things that I'll be coming to you and looking at is separate and apart from a new detention facility, expanding capacity at the current facility, utilizing a footprint that was already previously reviewed by a previous council. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up because, there's certainly the ideal situation, and then there's what's practical, what can we do within reason to address capacity issues in the short term without a super long-term approach. So I just wanted to touch bases with you about that, let you know that's something I'll be coming back to you with to talk about looking at a potential expansion on a plan that was already previously considered. And so that's really why I want to kind of get to this particular area, Chair Pugh, was just to have the ability to share that with you. Because I think the last meeting, it was just left with, are we only looking at a new facility and what does that look like? And that's really more of a longer term discussion, whereas something like an expansion could be a shorter term discussion, as you consider what you may want to do into the future. So with that being said, the last thing I'll point out is just a statement that I want to provide to you because, again, you all get a lot of questions. And so I want to make this communication to you that we received, again, in response to our November 30th report that we provided to the Department of Corrections. And I'll read this one line where it says, "It was apparent during this inspection that considerable effort and action has been taken to comply with applicable standards." Why am I saying that to you? Think about the question that you've received. Think about the feedback that you've heard. It doesn't reflect the agency who is actually responsible for doing the inspections. And that's what it's important for us to remember, is that while there are opportunities for us to improve, when we say to you that we're making these investments and that you can see where your money is going, the citizens of Richland County, the agency that has oversight of jails and prisons in South Carolina has articulated that while everything is not perfect, that they can see the efforts that have been made. And so I just wanted to make sure that we did not leave this meeting with you being aware of that, because it's important for you to understand that, others may have thoughts, and that's okay, but the agency that's responsible for reviewing your facility has spoken, and that's the agency that we've started off the conversation with. So I just wanted to share that with you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee on this evening. We certainly look forward to giving you all an update in the future. And thank you for your support of Alvinus Glen Detention Center, for the men and women who work there and the future employees who will work there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to just kind of echo the sentiments of my council and my colleagues. I truly appreciate this council and the efforts being made, the commitment to Alvin S. Glenn. I am astounded by this staff, and I can go back to the beginning when we first started, and I don't know if he's here, but Dr. Thompson, when he became the jail administrator, and I pick at him all the time, but just the commitment and the level that, and the efforts that have gone into this. And when I have community meetings all the time, I hear, all we got is a jail. Well, we got a jail, so we're gonna make it look good. It's going to improve. Everything is going to be great. And just being that person that's able to share with those community members what we're doing and how we're doing it and the efforts that are being made and the people that are working hard, like Mr. Harvey and his team, I can only say thank you. And I'm truly grateful and appreciative just to be in this position to say, hey, we started from the bottom, now we're here. So I just wanted to say thank you.
McBride, you recognize.
Thank you. I would like to echo what Ms. English said. And also I want to follow up with you, Mr. Brown, and to thank you for going outside of the box and looking at the other entities that are involved, even though Richland County has really taken the hit for most of the problems. In terms of the number of people that are in our detention facility and the demographics, we would find out that the majority are disproportionately Black. We would also find out that in our detention facilities, and I don't know whether Mr. Harvey can answer me or not, but the majority of them probably have public defenders. And is that correct? And the public defenders have large caseloads, so the majority probably bargain or plea with whatever they say. So this leaves us back to, and I'm really interested in looking at the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council in terms of the type of defense that we have and the type of crimes that are now being committed, or the offenses that they're being detained for, because many of them may be more serious offenses, but they don't have some of the paid attorneys that have more time. So I think that we need to look at that data again and use that where we can all come together and continue to make improvements. So again, I thank you for all the work that you've done. Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Walker, you recognize.
No, we out of time. Ms. McBride, I know that you didn't mean it to be a slight, but these public defenders that you just referenced, many of them, no, not many of them, all of them are county employees. And so I don't want the message sent to them, again, county employees, that they are not giving 110% to their clients and that they are just rolling over and acquiescing to the state and not protecting the constitutional rights of their clients, many of whom are Richland County residents as well. So I believe you meant well. I think the intentions were pure, but I think it also needs to be said that this council does not intend to send a message to lawyers who work for the county that somehow they are not vigorously defending the rights of their clients. Thank you.
Ms. McBride, you recognize.
I just have to comment because that was definitely not my intention, because the public defenders know I have been a strong advocate for providing more public defenders. I've talked with them and understanding that they can't do the work they need to do because the caseloads are so high, but they're doing the best they can. And I respect them. I have the utmost respect for them. I want more help for them. I don't want to hurt them. I want more help for them so that they can do the jobs they want to do and that they can help those that are in need of help. Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to take this time to say, Mr. Brown, thank you for the work that you and your staff are doing. And I also want to commend my colleagues for coming to this ad hoc committee meeting. This is we're going to try to turn the leaf and make sure that we all showing up because this is a hot topic here in Richland County. And with that being said, item number 5 on the agenda.
Adjourn.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, can you call for the vote, please?
Pugh,
Yes,
Walker,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion approved.
and now adjourned.